when we understand that that we have causal wills instead of free wills, it doesn't mean that either other people or we have license to do whatever we want, because we don't. Okay, one thing that's important to remember is that, and this is a guess on my part, it seems to be the way things work. Um, when we do what's right, when the universe compels us to do what's right, the universe rewards us with some kind of pleasure, either presently or in the future. When we do what's wrong, the universe will punish us in some way or another. So the idea is that, even though we might be compassionate towards someone, who's doing wrong, seeing him like a 2-year-old, that doesn't mean we absolutely have to be a doormat or have to be vulnerable to other people's aggression. And again, it doesn't give us license to say to ourselves, well, I don't have a free will, so I can do whatever I want. No, it just doesn't work that way. And that's very important to remember, because a lot of people who kind of see the reasoning in why we don't have a free will, why free will is an illusion, but can't completely accept it, a lot of times they're afraid. They're afraid, well, my God, we give up this illusion of free will and we will have chaos. It will be an end of civilization. But no, it won't be, because again, we're hedonic creatures. We seek pleasure, we avoid pain. If somebody's, doing something wrong, and again, we may not blame them for it, but we'll certainly have to take some kind of action to minimize the impact of that wrong. The same with us. So yeah, we don't really have to be afraid of civilization collapsing by our understanding that that free will is an illusion. In fact, the benefits of understanding our wills as causal, I think, far outweigh the detriments, the potential detriments. Because again, think about this, our whole civilization, our whole judicial system, our whole system of business and economics is based on the illusion of free will. Completely. It's like, somebody does, all right, with the criminal justice system, there is an understanding of extenuating circumstances. There is somewhat of an understanding of our causal will. For example, like if somebody does something wrong in our criminal justice system, and there's a mitigating factor, let's say that the person was distraught, let's say the person was ignorant of certain knowledge, the person had some kind of disability, the person was inebriated, whatever, within our law, it takes account for that, and it might minimize a sentence or just completely undo it. And again, that's a recognition of causality. That's a recognition that this person couldn't have helped doing what he did. In business, it's the same. In business, we ascribe morality to each other. Morality based on a free will, and some of us do much better, at whatever than others, at whatever it is that might be our business, and our current free will perspective has us basically reward that person above another person who wasn't as lucky. And that basically leads to the kind of competition, economic competition, that God, if you want to get very real about it, is the main engine for climate change, for global warming. You've got this competitive culture, that like, I of my own free will did something good, and I deserve to be rewarded for it, and to advance this cause based on it, rather than saying that, well, no, what I did wasn't of my own free will. It was just like out of fortune, out of luck, and my personal well-being is not any more important, certainly not at all more important than the fate of civilization, over the next several decades because of climate change and global warming. So so I mean, this has very profound implications and effects. Um, when we understand that the morality is is not a personal thing, that the morality is causal. In other words, like, if you want to talk about something being moral, the only thing you can talk about that's moral is the causal past, or God. Whatever's making us do what we're doing, that's the only moral thing, that exists. We're not moral beings as human beings, because we're compelled to do whatever moral or immoral act we do. We're just like, for example, it's like a hand. This hand might do something right or wrong, but we're not going to attribute responsibility to this hand. We're going to attribute it to the brain that leads it. Okay, and naturally, by extension, then we're going to not attribute responsibility to the brain that leads it. We're going to attribute it to the causal past. That's the most precise understanding of this. But the idea, you can see how, like, we're like hands, and we think we're the brains. Okay, and when it comes to morality, the more we can, the better we can understand that that everything is causal, that there is no personal morality, the less judgmental we will be. Think about some of the major tenets in the major religions, that even though let me tell you something, even though the major religions don't get this question right, they get a lot of questions right. I mean, basically the idea of religion tends to be about morality. Sometimes, it doesn't live up to its ideals, but there is within most, if not all, religions this idea of judgment, that sometimes it's not good to be judgmental per se. We have to differentiate right and wrong, but to be judgmental means to be indicative, to kind of blame. And so this whole concept of non-judgment, whether it be Christian, Jewish, Islamic, whatever, really has its basis in the idea that judgment doesn't make sense. If somebody's doing something and you're judging them, based on what they're doing, and they don't have a free will, well, then the judgment is erroneous. It's misplaced. So you could conceivably judge the causal past, God, reality, because I tend to do that. I say to myself, well, if I was God, I would not have created pain. And naturally, if there's no pain, there's no evil, because evil is what creates pain. In other words, yeah, if there was no pain, there could be no evil. So then I say to myself, well, basically, if the causal past, is doing things, we could say to ourselves, all right, well, that's wrong of the causal past. The causal past shouldn't have done that. And again, I say that, but then I have to like check myself and ask myself, well, is the causal past not also compelled? I mean, does the causal past have a free will? Think about it. Does God have a free will? My first guess is no. I mean, no. This, like, all right, we've got about almost 4 minutes. We're going to get into something that's important relative to this. And the idea is that, like, within our reality, there are a few things that transcend our ability to understand. And I'm going to go through this quickly and then apply to what we're talking about. Infinity in terms of space. It's impossible to know whether space goes outward infinitely and then stops, or that it stops at some point. Okay? Either prospect is illogical. The same goes for eternity. Eternity going into the eternal past, and eternity going into the eternal future. Okay? You know, our minds cannot wrap themselves around the idea of something, you know, just going on forever and ever, just like it can't wrap itself around the idea of something just stopping, of everything just stopping, you know. So, all right, so within that context, it seems, whoa, sorry, it seems that, yeah, it's impossible for us to know whether the universe that's compelling us is compelled itself or not. You know, that's an open question. I don't know. Maybe I haven't explored it deeply enough. It's hard to say, but you know, the reality that rings through is that fine, the causal past may have a free will, may decide of its own accord what will be and what won't be, but certainly we won't. You know, we can't do that as human beings. Okay, so, and it's because we can't do that that morality is not properly applicable to us as human beings. In other words, we're neither moral nor immoral. We're actors. We're actors on the stage. We're doing what the causal past compels relative to morality. If, you know, sometimes it has us do something that we consider, both in the present and in the future, to be good, other times not. But it's just not up to us. Okay. Yeah, if we're, you know, our world is at a very challenging time. Climate change is with us for several decades at least, and it's going to be extremely challenging. The global economic situation is going to be challenging. We've got a lot of challenges, and to the extent that we understand that that we do not have a free will, then we will understand that we're not, you know, quote unquote, morally responsible, and then we can be much more compassionate and non-judgmental and understanding toward our world. And that, I think, will be the way we solve these problems, because the free will perspective causes blame and causes you know, moral judgment, which causes a lot of competition and conflict and aggression. Whereas the causal will perspective, while it may have certain elements of that, you know, it's different. All right, that's all we have time for. Thanks for watching.